Onaje.
Onaje. I'm so sorry. Onaje. Man, it sounds like, first of all, you had an incredible, thoughtful business plan going into real estate from the get-go.
Absolutely. Absolutely, I did.
That is, first of all, I applaud you. And anyone who's listening to this right now, everything that he just said, how he laid out his business plan, that sounds awesome. I wish you were my coach in 2014 when I started buying rentals, because as a wholesaler, and that was my trade, and that's what I was great at. As a wholesaler, I was getting the best deals. I wasn't going out there and looking, hey, this is the worst house on the best block. I wasn't that thoughtful about it. This is the worst house on the best block, and I'm going to do this and da 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 da. It was, this is the best deal. This is the numbers. Look at the numbers on paper. This is the best deal. I'm going to go ahead and take this from down myself. So first of all, I want to just kind of speak to your point. Awesome job. I applaud you. Keep doing that. It's incredible.
It sounds like you had a great business plan around wholesaling, right?
And that's what I said earlier. That's what I was like. I wish I had, I wish I would have kept my eyes focused on that at that time, for sure. Instead of trying to get into all this, literally trying to be someone else. I was trying to be what someone else thought I should be. I should be a real estate investor, which means I need property, not be in a sales and marketing business, which is what wholesaling is. So yes, 100%. Derek, just to kind of speak to your point, bravo to you as well. It sounds like you did a really good job, and you were pretty thoughtful about what you did as well. Similar markets for sure. My question to you is, how long have you had some of these rentals? How long have you been doing this?
So about 3.5 years ago is when I purchased my first properties in Cleveland, Ohio, in these kind of rougher or D minus class areas. About 3.5 years ago.
And how many do you have, Derek, if you don't mind me asking?
I have 14 and 14 doors.
Gotcha.
There's a mix of single family and duplex.
Man, I would just say, stay on top of this already. It was just really, this is for everybody else who's listening. This is some lessons I learned. Stay on top of your property managers. I'm assuming you're using property managers.
Yeah, I use a Cleveland Property Management Group, and they're okay. I mean, you're absolutely right. It's difficult to find a good property manager that's going to manage F, D, and even C minus class neighborhoods. That's definitely, you don't get the response rate that you'd hope to have. And, they're not really, you know what it is.
Just stay on top of them. And what I mean by that is, not every single month, but obviously make sure you're checking your statements really thoroughly every single month. And have a phone call with them, get in touch with them, make sure that you're in dialogue with them every 2-3 months for sure. Stay on top of them. If you want to stay on top of, I think I know it's state by state, but however many inspections they allow per year. I know Section 8 only does 1 per year, but you're up in Alabama, you're allowed to do up to 4 per year. So however many inspections you're allowed to do per year, do them. Stay on top of repairs. And these are some lessons that I had to kind of learn the hard way in those kinds of areas.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you there. Definitely. For sure.
Awesome. Yeah. Jay, you have some rentals, so jump in, buddy.
Awesome. Thanks, Tim. Yeah, I'm in Columbus, and Derek, I wanted to discuss with you because we've been evicting people this whole time. There hasn't been any month except December where we weren't allowed to evict anyone. So check with your county. It may be different in your county than here, but the eviction moratorium in our area is not real.
Yeah, that's same with Cleveland as well. In the very beginning, we thought that was something that we can do and get away with it. But now, you can file and you can, get the judgment and all of that. But, there's no sheriff that's going to show up and actually physically remove them from the property.
Gotcha. Well, luckily, there's so much money out there right now for tenants. We've been able to help them acquire funds from different organizations to get them their rent. So thank goodness so far we haven't had to get to the point of having the sheriff show up. But we have filed, taken them through and come to payment agreements in eviction court, or we've been able to get assistance from either Leads or the Coalition of Housing or something of that nature. But hearing that, you guys probably already know then my rentals are B and C class neighborhoods. And I've bought houses for $4,000, $6,000, still have them. Rents have gone up since I bought those over a decade ago. Rents have gone up almost 100%. So I'm getting, $1,000 a month for a 3-bedroom now, where when I first started with that house, I was getting $600 a month as an example. So we do a little bit different strategy. We do a little mix. We do a lot of lease option purchases, even in the C-class neighborhoods. And I think there's a disbelief that you can lease option a house in a C-class neighborhood, but we do it all the time. And those tenants will usually stay 3, 4, 5 years, and they usually move on, and then we do it again. We do try to help them buy the house, but most of them don't do the instructions they're given. And so they end up leaving because of either divorce or job loss, or they move out of the city. And so we've been able to fill our C-class rentals with typically around 4 to 5% down. So instead of getting a $1,000 deposit, we might get $3,500 as an example. And that's non-refundable because it's for an option to buy. So we get to keep that. And if they buy it, then we apply it as down payment and or closing costs for them. We do have some Section 8 rentals as well. And those are typically same thing as single moms here with kids. And sometimes they have a disability, or they're just unable to work for some reason, or they can only work part-time because they're a single mom and they have 3 or 4 or 5 children that they have to have time to take care of. Dad's not around to assist. So, you have to know going in, you rehab these rentals a certain way. We don't put carpet in ours. We just use solid surface flooring. We do allow pets because they're going to have one anyway. They're just going to lie to you.
Man, you're spot on.
So we charge them and we give them an option. Hey, give a $500 pet deposit. It's refundable if your pet doesn't do anything to the house. Or you can have up to 2 medium-sized pets approved. The breed has to be approved by us, and it's $50 a month extra for rent, and you don't get that back.
We allow pit bulls.
We have had one tenant pay the $500 deposit. That's it.
And we allow all dogs.
Yeah, we
just have to have additional.
We will allow pit bulls. They have to have insurance on the pit bull. We do have a couple of tenants that have pit bulls. As long as they have their own insurance and it's all approved by our insurance company, then we're happy. But to bring up Brian's point earlier, we are managing. I have my own team. We manage our own properties. We do turnkey management for other investors in our area, but we built that ourselves. We did it through trial and error. We figured out what works and what doesn't work, and put systems and processes in place over time. I think you guys heard earlier, if someone just showed me some greenbacks, then I put them in the house. that was my initial approval method.
that's how I got into rentals. I was an accidental landlord. When the market crashed and I couldn't retail my deals, I I was desperate, so I could.
Yes.
And that's a horrible way to
Oh,
to
yeah.
start out your rental business.
Yeah, don't do that. Okay.
Yeah, yep, exactly. All right, Jay, thanks for sharing that. James, you haven't gotten a chance to share yet. I'd love for you to share how you made and or lost your first $1 million in real estate.
Yeah, thanks a lot for having me, Tim. I'm hearing a lot of these stories, and I can relate, can totally relate to what you said, Jay, about pets. The gentleman who just left, talking about managing third-party management, especially in C-class areas, I've had plenty of experience with that, and I'll actually go as far as to get on a call with each of my property managers once per week. So he was saying, at least once every 2 or 3 months. I got on a call once per week with each and every one of them, whether they're doing a good job or not. And then I'll actually send them a spreadsheet with some KPIs that I'm tracking, just so there's checks and balances. Even if they're doing a great job, there's 4 things that I'm tracking. One of them is occupancy, obviously. The second thing is economic occupancy. That's just the tenants who are actually paying. That's a much more important metric. Then I have number of days vacant for each vacant property. And if it's over 30, we're having a serious issue. Should never get even close to that. And then I have separate, metrics that I'm tracking if we have a vacancy as well. And I'm happy to dive into that. And then the fourth KPI I'm tracking is the number of evictions that we have that month. Hopefully that's 1 or less, but you never know. So those are the things I'm tracking with my property management company, and especially when you're in C-class areas, that's really important. But anyways, go ahead, Tim. Were you about to say something?
Yeah, I was just about, did you jump right into the rental markets when you got started in real estate investing, or how yeah, like I was asking earlier, how did you make your first $1 million in real estate?
Yep, totally. So I digressed because I wanted to get that point across. But yeah, so I started when I was in college. I started wholesaling for about 3 months, and I realized how bad I was at it. So I went on to fix and flips and rentals, and I knew that I wanted to primarily get into rentals. I had studied quite a bit of the key players in the game, so I knew that I wanted to hold long term. And my fix and flips, I'd make a few $1,000 or I'd lose money, or it was just contractor nightmares. I wasn't a good businessman. I wasn't good at managing people, so those didn't end up very well. But I learned a lot along the way, and yeah, as I became smarter, I focused solely on rental properties. I didn't do any lease options. I didn't do any sub-2s. I didn't do anything creative. For me, it's always been raising private money and purchasing value-add real estate. So every property of the 65 units that I own today, they've all been value-add. I just closed on 7 houses this week. Those are all going to go under construction. And that's really been the game. Value to real estate, adding value through construction, refinancing, and doing it. And it served me really well whenever I make mistakes, rather than with the flip. When you do it with the flip and you get days on market, or you're running behind, with your hard money loans, could be a real disaster. With rentals, if you're making mistakes, if you buy it right, you can make a few mistakes and you could still make a lot of money along the way.
Say that again, James.
Yeah.
Say that on again.
Well, that's just my opinion. I know a lot of people who do really well with flips, but for me, it's all about creating long-term wealth. And hopefully, as you go, you make less and less mistakes. You become a better manager. You start tracking things better. You know what's important. You know what you need to be spending your time on. But for me, rentals have just given me a healthy profit along the way, and that's what I'm sticking with. And my largest deal to date is a 17 unit, and hopefully in 2021 I can get to larger apartment deals and use the same strategy that I've used for small multifamily into larger multifamily.
That's awesome, James. Thank you, sir. All right, Mark, we go to you.
Oh,
I know you. Yeah,
hey,
I know
Tim.
you've been. Hey, I know you been a real estate investor for a long, long time. Probably since I was a kid, probably. Yeah, I'd love to hear how you made your first $1 million in real estate.
You want to hear how I made my first one, then lost it, and then made it again, or just how I
Yes.
won?
No, all of it. Yeah.
And how long do you want me to talk for, Tim? You break me up when you want me to stop, because if I get on a roll, it's a long story. I've been in real estate, just so some of you know me. Don't know me, but I've been in real estate over 40 years. I bought my first house in 1978, and I just sold my first apartment complex. Actually closed yesterday, that I bought 20 years ago. But the journey
Wow.
in between is what you want to hear, I believe.
Yes. Yes.
In 1978, I started buying real estate. I bought my first house. It was $13,000. By the time I was 25 years old, I had over 100 properties, and I bought all of them with no money down. Put cash back in my pocket on every single one of them. That was the time when banking was kind of like before the crash in 2008, where if you could fog up a mirror, you could get financing. And boy, oh boy, what a 21-year-old kid like me felt like when I bought my first deal, put cash into Mr. Hip Pocket Bank, and owned a property that gave me positive cash flow. And that was what I wanted. When I started back then, I didn't know anything about flipping or wholesaling. In fact, I didn't know anything about wholesaling until 10 years ago, after I had built my next fortune. But what I did after I found something that worked for me, and this is critical, I think, to all of you down here who want to know how to make your first million, is once you find the formula that works for you, do it again and do it again, and then teach somebody else how to do it and come do it together, so you can scale and start getting more of them. But if you find something that works, stay on that lane until you really capitalize and have it as something that's automatic for you. So that formula that I started in 1978, I ran it up. Like I said, I had 113 houses by the time I was 25 years old. And well, like a lot of people I see out there tonight, that first money that you get as a youngster, most of us don't know how to keep it and hang on to it. I started living fast and driving nice cars and finding girls and finding Las Vegas and everything that would take you down the wrong way. I'm just part of my problem, how we lost it. I'm an addict. I became addicted to cocaine at the time, because in 1978, early 80s, that was what you did if you were cool and had money. Just like now, some people drive fast cars and take these exotic vacations before they really have nested it away and learned how to hold on to it. And I started doing the wrong habits for a period of time. And by the time I was 41 years old, keep in mind, I was retired by 30 in my mind. I started opening up other businesses, hair salons, comedy clubs, computer software company, pizza place, manufacturing place. And I started going out of my lane. But most of all, the habits that got me to there, I started going another direction. And when I was 41 years old, I found myself in the streets, no car, no place to live, mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally, and financially bankrupt with nothing left to do. And I sat myself in that hotel room that I borrowed $1,000 to stay in, had a car driving with no air conditioner in Florida in the summertime. And I made a decision that day again. So that's how I made my first millions. And that's how I lost my first ones. If you want me to keep going on to how I made my next 10 or 20.
Yes. Go.
Okay.
I do have a quick question. So back in the 70s, were you mentioned you bought them no money down. Were they bank financing, or did you do assumable loans, or how did you get to your first 100 properties there by 25?
Yep, I went kind of fast. Like I said, in those late 70s, early 80s, before the interest rates went way up. And if you guys, everybody should capitalize on today's interest rates if they can. Even hard money is easy money, because back then it was over 10%, and I was making money that way. But at that time, the banks would give anybody who could fog up a mirror credit. or give them loans, and they would even give them loans and let me take cash back and have the seller take a second mortgage, and that's how I did all of them back then.
I see. Okay. Well,
But
cool. All right.
you can do that today. As a matter of fact, one of my guys that borrows money from me borrows more than 100% for properties that he finds undervalued. So the same formula can be worked today even better, because there's people out there. There's lots of money in the streets. There's a crisis going on now in the market. So there's lots of opportunity, but there's also cheap money. And to me, cheap money is anything under 10%. If you can make a deal work, because my favorite saying is, it's always the right time to buy real estate if you buy real estate the right way. And the right way for me means standalone properties that you can purchase, put cash into Mr. Hip Pocket Bank, pay down your mortgage, and at the end of the day, you can end up like me. You know, I'm not smarter than anybody else, but what I did was stay consistent and persistent for extended period of time, the last 20 years, and that's what really paid off. So I can get into the next part.
Yes,
Tim,
yes,
wants
do.
to do,
Yes,
how
go
I
ahead.
came from the streets and how I made my comeback. It was the same way, but different. It was easier because I knew I had done it before, but I was sitting in that hotel room back in 1998, hopeless, helpless in all ways of my life, mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally, but last but not least financially, like I already said. And I made a decision that real estate was going to be the vehicle to get me out of my predicament where I was. Now, back in the 70s and 80s, when I bought with no money down, cash back, that was with the banks. But in my head, I could still do that. See, there's two kinds of people in the world. They're both right. If you believe you can, you can. And if you believe you can't, you can't. It's all about the belief, because when you're out there, whatever you believe you can do, you can actually do. So I started again and came out of my hole, and I found somebody who would take back a second mortgage. We did creative financing, and I started again. Now, keep in mind, at this point, the first run I had never flipped a house before. So it was only about acquiring assets so I could have cash flowing properties that in the end would give me financial freedom. So I started doing that again. I bought my first house with no money down, cash back. And then I got my second one that I actually moved into. And at that time, in that hotel room that night, I wrote on a 3x5 card, I was going to have 50 houses by the time I was 50. At 49 years old, I had 50 properties. That second property I bought was a house that had an apartment attached to it. And at the beginning, I bought a lot of non-conforming things that most people wouldn't look at because they provided more cash flow. You know, in the DC neighborhoods, and non-conforming properties traditionally give you more cash flow. So I started buying those deals that people wouldn't want, that I saw how I could put money in my pocket, borrow the money to get it, pay down the mortgage, and end up having property that was free and clear, which is all my properties now are free and clear. I own over 200 doors. I've got a property management company that takes care of them. But I started doing that formula that I started at the beginning and just did it again and again and again. At the same time, I began flipping properties, which allowed me to keep buying more and more properties. But at the very beginning of this second run that we're talking about, what was critical to my success was I found somebody who believed in me. Now, how do you do that? First of all, you got to believe enough in yourself that you can find somebody to believe in you. Second thing is to get enough knowledge that you can talk to people with confidence about what you're doing and where you're going. And so it was real critical. Fast forward to yesterday. I sold it was 16 units now because 2 of the units burnt down over the years. But I sold my first apartment complex that I bought 20 years ago that I thought I was going to keep for the rest of my life. At that time, I believe. Go ahead, Tim.
No, go ahead and complete your thought. I was going to ask you, why did you sell it? But
okay.
Yeah, go ahead and finish your thought.
Yep. That's a good question, because when I bought this property, this was the one that I was going to keep for the rest of my life. Because remember at the time I was coming out of being broke. We talked about how we lost our money. I was broke. And this property that I acquired, 18 units at the time, I acquired it with no money down. And I had an asset that was going to put money in Mr. Hip Pocket Bank and at the same time pay down the mortgage. And yesterday was the the final of it. It's the only property beside that house that I lived in that I talked about with the apartment. It was the only property that I lived in that I had any emotion attached to, because there were so many lessons learned along the way over this 20-year period. Because basically I bought up that whole neighborhood. And that was one of the things that I used to scale my business, buying certain zip codes and all properties that would provide cash flow. So 20 years later, no mortgage on the property. And the reason I sold it was because that's a really good question. If the deal had fallen out, I wasn't sure that I was going to sell it. But because I have over 200 doors now, my cash flow is good. It's in an area that's a little bit farther south, and I'm living my life basically not in that area anymore. And when my son-in-law didn't want to stay in the business, it was time to sell off part of my portfolio. Last year, I sold off 10% of my portfolio. This year, again, I'll sell another 10%. And I own all those properties free and clear because along the way, I started fixing and flipping properties. And in the last 15 years, I've bought, fixed, and sold over 1,000 properties that I fixed and flipped. And that money from those fix and flips paid down all the mortgages, where I basically have no mortgages on any of these doors that I have right now. And I have a property management company in place that watches these for me. And we also manage for other investors that I've brought and taught how to buy and sell in the same way that I do. So that's my story, long and short of it.
That's great.
I skipped about 20 years of action in between, but I started you from broke twice and brought you to where I am now, which is living in Colorado, mostly skiing every day. I'm on my 46th day. Tomorrow, I'm going to go over 1 million vertical feet because I make goals no matter what I'm doing, even in skiing. The goal is 100 days and 2 million vertical feet. And all these processes that I did always took some goal setting, that I had a clear vision of where I wanted to go in front of me, because that is what kept me going when the going got tough. And the way to get your millions, everybody, is to stay consistent and persistent. Have a clear vision in front of you, no matter what's going on in the marketplace, and stay steady and pick up assets all the years as you're moving along. Good times, bad times. The crash of 2008, as soon as I got my mindset right, that is the time I capitalized and made most of my wealth. Do what other people aren't doing, but most of all, do what other people aren't willing to do. And that's the difference between success and failure. When you become willing to do what other people aren't willing to do, and stay steady no matter what's going on in that marketplace, no matter what your uncle or mother or father tell you, no matter what the newspaper tells you or shows you, you've got to stay consistent with a clear vision of where you want to go.
Nice. Thank Awesome. Awesome, Mark. Thank you so much for that. Man, great story. All right, guys, I'm going to reset the room real quick here. Do this. Pull down to refresh your screen, so that way it'll align all the speakers up and everyone in the room up. Man, just absolutely amazing stories. You've heard it. Gosh, we can totally transcribe the call that we had today and turn it into a book, for generations later to learn from, for sure. Great stuff. We are recording this call today. And if you want a copy, if you want the link to the recording, all I ask is that you click on the plus sign and ping a few of your friends. Take a screenshot of that, send it to me, and as soon as I get the call recording up, I will send it out to you. Okay, so if you can do that for me, and then of course, click into the speaker's bio, check them out. They all had, just absolutely amazing stories, and so make sure you follow them. Click on the notification bell button, so that way whenever they are speaking in the room, it'll notify you. Okay. I have turned on the hand raising feature, so go ahead and feel free to raise your hand. I'm going to bring you up. Any questions that you want to ask, you are welcome to ask our experts up here regarding their journey of how they made the first million, lost the first million, made it back again, sometimes a few times. And so, all right. Spencer, did you have Yeah. Okay, let me see here. Okay. All right, go ahead. If you have questions, go ahead and raise your hand and I'll bring you up as a speaker, okay? In the meantime, I have another question for you, gentlemen here. So have loan. Okay, Spencer, you up? Can you talk? Did you have a question?
Yeah, I did have a question. So my
Go
question is
ahead.
for Mark and the rest of the panel. Mark, you said that you were selling off sections of, 10% of your portfolio now that everything's paid off. My first question, I guess, is do you have kids? And the second question is why are you selling off now? And anyone else that wants to jump in there, I'm curious if you guys are planning to sell off your portfolios at any time in the future.
Sure. Well, I'm 64 years old. I have over 200 properties that are free and clear. My kids aren't going to come in the business. I'm spending most of my time not in that area anymore. The market is pretty good right now, pretty high. And I just think cash is king. So I'm gathering up cash. But what I'm really doing with the cash is, in fact, I'm walking out my door right now to go look at a property here in Colorado, because I'm going to take that money and I'm going to move some of it to Colorado and do some short-term rentals out here. I'm doing a 1031 exchange on that apartment complex. And so there's several factors that get involved in me wanting to sell it off right now. If you don't have a portfolio like that, now's a great time to buy. As a matter of fact, find a guy like me in your area of town who you can convince to take all his properties. The way I got my first 113 properties, I actually found one guy at the time in Phoenix, Arizona, and I got 81 houses as a 22-year-old kid in one fell swoop. And it's finding a guy who trusts you, believes in you, and can work some creative financing together. Not that that's how I'm going to sell off my properties, but that's how I accumulated, and that's the reason I'm. And so I hope that answered your question for you, Spencer.
Spencer, I'm selling some, not a lot. Mine are very, very low LTV, so I'm selling some to move into some commercial properties. But the other ones that have extremely low LTVs, I'm actually going to take them from about 20% LTV to around 50 or 60. Because the rates are so low, I can actually take that money out and I'll have the exact same payment that I have now. And then I'll take that cash and invest it into some commercial assets as well.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
you got it, Tio.
All right, thank you. Yeah, I was going to say I'm doing the same thing as Jay. I'm pretty much pulling all the equity out of properties that have a bunch of equity into them. Right, like Mark was saying, cash is king, right? So if it's either, buying another big apartment deal or seeing what this year brings or the following year. But my goal is to kind of hold forever. That's why we kind of built a vertically integrated property management company with maintenance, with everything. So my goal is to set that company up so well that like generations from now, like if I'm not there and like maybe my grandchildren are just complete shitheads, no matter how bad they are, they still wouldn't be able to ruin the business.
Yeah,
My goal is to try and get to 100+ properties. So, until that happens, there's absolutely no selling in my book. Definitely pulling equity out of the properties where there's a decent amount of equity, but no selling.
yeah, Spencer. I'm kind of like Jay. I'm pulling out equity. I had been a buy payoff guy for a long time, but this market is scary and weird, to say the least. It's definitely unique. So I figured, but again, I'm still trying to scale to Mark's level, so I don't want to sell. But again, I'm a big fan of refinancing out. This is a great time, like Mark said. Other people said debt right now is at a all-time low. So for me, again, it's part of my game is beating inflation. And right now, what perfect way to beat inflation is to lock in long-term, good 30-year financing. So That's what I'm doing, taking that money to then trade up. So right now I'm hunting for a guy like Mark in my area to see if I can't take some units off their hands. And again, that's how you're gonna get that infinite return. I'm big on that right now.
Yeah, I think I'm the same way as Derek. Like I'm trying to right now this year I want to just get above 20. Um and then eventually I want to scale to over 100 and no selling right now. Um I think I have one that might have enough equity to refi, but I'll visit that this year if I need to. But yeah, right now just a slow build.
Awesome. All right, Spencer, did you get your question answered, buddy?
I did really appreciate it, guys. One quick follow-up question. I heard you guys saying that you wanted to increase your portfolio to 10, 20, 100 properties. I'm curious if there's a uh, cash flow goal or overall value that you're targeting, because I'm here in Los Angeles and the size of the deal here is a little bit bigger than some of these other areas. I'm curious what the fundamentals are behind that.
Yeah, so with me, trying to get 100 Section 8 doors in my market, 2 bedroom, 1 bathroom is the most common unit. And those you can generally get $750 a month from Section 8. So with 100 doors, I'm trying to cash flow at $75,000 a month on that. Plus, minus the expenses, the little things that come up here and there. But 75 to 100,000 a month is what my eyes are on.
Spencer, to answer your question, and with my goals, when I'm buying any rental properties that I'm holding, I'm using the same formula I use for a flip. I want to buy it and fix it and have it rent ready. And I want to have at least 30, but I prefer 35% equity in the deal. And in addition to that, I will not take on a rental unless I can at least cash flow $300 a month after all the bills are paid. But I'm really pushing to try to get $400 to $500 most of the time. But I will go down to 300. Otherwise, I will not take the deal.
Appreciate that.
Awesome,
Side
Spencer.
note, we got a 40 unit listing in Los Angeles if anyone's trying to
No
come by
LA
here.
for me.
Pass.
No LA. Hell no.
No way.
Good try.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Like that's the sentiment that so many investors have about California. So I'm really curious as to how the California market's gonna, it's gonna be like in the next few years for sure.
Yeah, leasing is totally dead on the commercial side. Retail is dead. I've got a 6 cap retail building here in Los Angeles that hasn't moved. We had it in escrow before COVID for 2.2, had to do a price reduction down to 1.8. So $400,000 price cut, increased the cap rate. Still doesn't really get a whole lot of offers submitted. And then multifamily is the only thing that's stayed relatively strong throughout all that. Office is about as good as retail.
Gotcha. Wow. Very interesting. All right,
Spencer, I don't invest in foreign countries.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
without getting political either, it's another thing to think about here in California.
That's interesting. All right, Spencer, any other questions, sir?
That's it. You can bump me down. Thanks.
All right, thanks. Okay, Rob, I know you just joined us. Welcome. I'd love to hear your story of how, I don't know if you started out in real estate or not, but love to hear your story, how you made and lost your first $1 million.
Yeah, absolutely. I got started in real estate in college flipping flipping townhouses, and this was 2000. Let's see, 2007, 8, 9. I didn't make any money, but I kind of broke even, which was pretty good for those years in the real estate market. And instead of paying $1,000 or $1,500 a month in rent, I kind of live rent free with my, break even operation. And in college, I started a technology marketing business. Eventually, in 2013, we were looking for our first office. And instead of renting a place, I wanted to own it. So luckily had saved up the capital over those years to be able to do that. And so we built our first office building. And then a couple of years later, had outgrown that and sold it. Didn't make $1 million, but did okay on it. And was looking for our next one after that. And the first $1 million I made was on it's about a 40,000 square foot office building here in Nashville. We rented out the top floor just for our business, and then I rented out the other 3 floors. So we only took up about a fourth of the building, and because it was owner occupied real estate, we had to put in about, I think it was $350,000. It's pretty low, relatively speaking, because the total project size, renovated and all in. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So the total project, I bought the building for 1.75, and then I put in another 3 million or so in fixing it up. Took a loan from a bank, but only had to put in 350,000. Today, this is 2000. Bought that building in 2015, March of 2015. 5 years later, just got an appraisal for $15 million not too long ago. So that was my first deal. That was my first $1 million, my first $10 million on that one project. And it was just a crazy combination of things that allowed us to do that. It was timing. It was the macroeconomics here in the Nashville market, just everything going crazy about it. And then it was also the rental rates going up so substantially. So when we first moved in, we were charging $19 a foot full service, which is about $13 a foot triple net. And today we're leasing it out for about $30 a foot full service. So, through leverage and through increase in market rates, just had an amazing deal with that one. So that was my first $1 million. Now I've not lost $1 million. I've lost some on I've lost smaller amounts on some various deals, experimenting early on and everything, and just learning what didn't work. And actually the biggest mistakes I made early on was over improving for the neighborhood. So I'd buy a condo for $100,000 and I'd put 100,000 in as, I had 200 in it, but the record in the neighborhood for selling was like 170,000. Right. So those were the mistakes I made early on, but I surrounded myself with good mentorship and good real estate brokers who helped guide me along the way. And luckily my mistakes were somewhat small relative to my gains.
That's awesome. Yeah, definitely great to have great mentorship for sure. Yeah, I wasn't as smart, when I wrote the last market up, I thought I knew it all. So when the market crashed in 2008, I was, I thought I was just too smart. So I was trying to navigate that whole market myself, and that didn't work out nearly as I would hope it would be. So yeah, for sure, having a mentor to guide you through is definitely important. All right, Rob, thank you so much, sir. Really appreciate hearing your story there. Great job.
Thank you.
Okay, real quick, I'm gonna we'll reset the room, and then we'll have Dr. Irene share, and then Maria, if you have questions, And then I do have a big question I want to ask each of you, on speakers, before we call it a night here. So, guys, go ahead and pull down your screen to refresh the room. It'll, reorganize the panels here. And we are recording tonight's call. We'll make this call available to those of you who do me this small favor, which is click on the plus sign, ping a few of your friends, take a screenshot of that, DM me on Instagram, and let me know you've done that. And as soon as I get the recordings up, probably tomorrow morning, I will send you the recording. We have had absolutely amazing shares from each of the speakers here, and yeah, I mean, tons of wisdom being shared today. All right, Dr. Irene, did you have a question, or did you wanted to share regarding your real estate journey of how you made or lost your first $1 million in real estate?
Thanks for bringing me up. I have more of a question, if that's okay.
Okay. Yes. What's your
I
question?
wasn't able to hear everyone's story, but during your real estate journey, did anyone happen to house hack as a married couple with young kids? Right now, I'm trying to convince my husband that that's the best way to accelerate our portfolio. We're only 2 doors in. We're pretty new to this. So I was wondering if anyone had any insight on that.
I house hacked my house a few years ago, and the reason being because I bought way too big of a house, and I was able to pretty much turn it into a duplex for a walkout basement and so forth. But I did it, but I didn't have kids. I had a girlfriend, but it definitely takes some getting used to. But the rewards outweigh the cons, I would say.
Dr. Irene, my question is, what goals are you looking for? Are you looking for cash flow? Are you looking for equity? What's your specific?
We're looking more for equity.
You could house hack a duplex too, or a 4 unit. So there's multiple different ways to house hack. So you could do something like that too. I did the Airbnb route.
Yeah, I only asked that question because if you're looking for equity, for me, I didn't house hack, but my wife was pregnant when we were doing our first rehab on our first house, and you can just kind of go the old school way of buying an ugly home in a great neighborhood. If you're just looking from an equity play with kids, I just the house hacking. I've got 2 young ones, and I don't. For me, I guess where I'm at in life, I'm not as young as I used to be. So, that might be a challenge just with people and bodies and, all that kind of deal. But, an old school, and you can do this in any market to Mark's point. I mean, buying an ugly home in a great neighborhood is just a great way to kind of just get started, build up a good equity piece. And then once you've got the equity, you can go from there to figure out what the next move is.
Yeah. And, if you could afford it, if, trying to get that quadplex, moving the family into one side of it for a year, and renting out those other 3 units would be an excellent idea. I think that's one of the just fastest way to accelerate your growth.
Thank you all.
Dr. Irene, are you do you work full time, or are you
Yeah, so I'm an entrepreneur and I do have a W-2 job, and I'm using the W-2 to leverage real estate accumulation.
Gotcha? Okay. Yeah,
I
because
was
I mean, go ahead, Jay.
sorry, Tim. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, if I mean, worst case scenario, if your husband is not on board to house hack, there are plenty of strategies that that you can build capital cash quickly in real estate, whether that's wholesaling, flipping, creative financing, subject to. I mean, there are plenty of different strategies that you can build, that you can use to build your portfolio fairly quickly.
Yeah, you don't have to necessarily sacrifice your personal life. I did it. I mean, we there's a lot of long nights and fixing toilets and all kind of other silliness and answering tenant calls or whatever. But there's definitely a lot more efficient ways of doing it these days. And there's no one formula. I mean, you've heard everybody say a different way of getting there.
Irene, I wanted to tell you, and someone else mentioned it earlier. I forget who it was. Maybe it was Derek, using a 203k loan, an FHA 203k. It's a fantastic product. I've helped numerous home buyers start their investments with doing that. So you buy a house that's beat up, the 203k lets you borrow up to 35,000 for repairs. They have a full K too, which will allow structural work and let you go above that 50,000. And you have to use a licensed general contractor. They get vetted. I mean, they have to go through some serious hoops to be approved to be able to rehab that property for you. And typically they have a 30-day window to finish it in the end, unless it's substantial work. But it is a great way to pick up a property and get it at a discount, have the contractor go in, rehab it the first 30 days before you move in. And then you move in and you have built-in equity, and you only have to live there for 12 months. And then you can sell it or refinance it and move somewhere else.
Yeah, but I used the 203k loan, and I think we will all agree. For Derek mentioned it earlier, if you can find a way to use a 203k plus a fourplex, that is the best loan I think in all of real estate.
That's awesome. All right, Dr. Irene, did you have your questions answered today?
Yes, I did. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, thanks for coming up. Okay, Maria, did you have a question for our experts today?
Hi, everyone. Thank you. I'm just here absorbing just taking in all the information. I'll keep it short and simple. My first question is, when you made your first million, how did you reward yourself? And my second question is, when you lost your first million, what did you do to bounce back?
Great question. Who wants to go
Mark,
first?
I would love to hear what you got to say.
Yeah.
Oh shit! I was hoping nobody was going to call on me for this one. Well, be honest with you, on the way up when I was making my first millions, that was what I talked about. My habits started to change, and it was always a celebration by that point. We're talking sex, drugs, rock and roll, and that's the long and the short of it. Today, when I make a million, it's just like another day. But I can tell you this, losing a million's no fun.
For me, Maria, my process has all been slow and steady. So I never really just felt a cash infusion of $1 million at one time. And so, because my wealth had just accumulated over time slowly, the good news around that is that you learn along the way, right? Like you adopt processes, you don't change quickly, or whatnot. So for me, I never just went from like, oh, right now I'm broke and then tomorrow I'm balling. So I never really went crazy. What's funny is, about that question, I'm still in my original first house that I ever bought, so we didn't upgrade there. And I've never been into cars. That was never my thing. And I bought my first truck that I actually liked, my vehicle, this past summer for the because the financing was so good. So I guess I finally treated myself probably about 12, 13 years later. And I got a car that I like. So for me, not all that sexy, but yeah, slow and steady kind of wins the race for me.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with Anaje. It was kind of the exact same way with me. However, once I got I think it was either seventh or eighth rental property, I went out and bought new clothes. I did. I fell in love with a clothing company called Robert Graham, and I went to Las Vegas, Nevada, which was the closest retail store location, and went crazy, and it was fun. So that was one way that I did reward myself. But again, like Onaje, I never flipped a deal for that big million, but over that slow accumulation, gathered and acquired the properties that now accumulate over to nearly 2 million. So
what I can also add here is that you want to step into the future that you're trying to create. And feeling like a millionaire is a good thing. So it's always good to reward yourself when you reach certain milestones in some way, shape, or form. Early on, think about when I making money early on. I was a 21-year-old kid. I was putting $5,000 at a crack into Mr. Hip Pocket Bank, and I felt like a millionaire then. And so that enthusiasm and that feeling, because our thoughts, they're the language of our mind, and our feelings, they're the language of our body. When those two things get congruent, it opens up and gets you pointed in that direction. And that's what we're really looking to do, is to get pointed in the direction of who we want to become, but to begin to feel it now. So acting as if, feeling as you are, but being conservative in your spending habits, keeping everything under grip, so you can start to put the money away to buy other rental properties or to pursue your real estate career or your hobbies or whatever you want in your life. But that reward is an important thing as you make progress.
Yeah, I was going to share a couple things, but first, Mark, you just made me remember when I was first out of school, a guy pulled me aside. He was a corporate counsel at a company that I was consulting with, and he told me to start carrying a couple $100 bills around in my wallet, which would have been around 1999, 2000, a little different than now, 20 years ago. And when you're like, young and having a couple hundos in your wallet, it was funny. It made you feel completely different. So I agree with what you said.
Bam, no doubt about it. I still to this day always want to keep a wad of 1,000 or two just because of that.
Yeah, it's funny. Or you have a bunch of 5s and 10s in your wallet and you throw 100 on, or in your money clip, and you throw 100 on the outside of it.
Yeah.
By the way,
no, because then you're tricking yourself.
I'm just kidding. Since COVID though, I literally haven't had a piece of cash on my human this entire time. I don't think. I've got my ID and a couple credit cards or bank cards. But hey, I wanted to share to answer the question. How I guess rewarded myself when we really started taking off and owned all the properties and we were flipping a lot of houses. I indulged in my visionary business mind, and you might not have been in here when we were telling my story in the beginning, but in a bad way, I indulged in just starting this business and that business, and we got a lot of things, hired people and got bigger offices, and I thought that I was reinvesting in my business. And now that I look back on it, I was just it wasn't right, but that's kind of how I treated myself, because it felt good, like kind of like I made it. I got more employees, I got a bigger office. I mean, I was just spending more money, quite frankly. But I wanted to share something more importantly regarding how the bounce back. And so something I did, it's kind of, I'm super, one of the companies I own does a lot of super into psychology of building teams, and it does it analyzes behavioral, personality, and cognition traits, and helps people build teams. Really into that stuff. But that, I've always been into that, but it really started as I was bouncing back, and I was one of my boys was getting tested for ADD at the time, and he went through a full psychological panel, and I was like, I want to do that, kind of partly because I wanted to see what he was going through, but I knew that I was kind of seeking to get to know myself better. And it was really interesting because when I did that, after you get done, you have a psychologist who I felt weird going to a counseling session to have the results interpreted. But she was like, yeah, you're super stressed, like enormously stressed, but you're not dealing with it. And I was like, I'm not stressed. It was so funny. She's like, yeah, no, you are. And it was really, it was real interesting to dig in. And that started a very interesting journey for me, where I really realized that therapy isn't something that, people need when they're in all kinds of trouble. It's something that we all need, and counseling as well. and I had business coaches, but I shifted and I started going to a life coach that did Enneagram. It's ENNEA, Enneagram, Enneagram. It's kind of like a spiritual disc. But that really opened my eyes, and I went to her for about a year. I was also going to a psychologist at the time that did origin of family, and really help you understand why and who you are because of nurture and nature. And I got really self introspective, and I started to understand myself, and I started to understand how other people work. And for me, that was an awakening that I realized that, so like, it was like the Matrix for me, like the way people acted and the way people did things and the way that I did things and the way that I perceived reality, which was like completely wrong. It just kind of like the scales came off my eyes and I could just start to see things a lot better. And it really, really it really cleared up my judgment. It really cleared up my focus. It cleared up my thinking. Made me feel really comfortable in my own skin. Made me feel, I got very empathetic with other people. And so that I started a pretty big journey of investing in myself and getting to know myself. And that's when I discovered my purpose. And my purpose is to create impact in other people's lives. More specifically, lasting, positive, and significant impact. And once I got that, kind of like what Mark's saying, the other things became a lot easier. And that's what really allowed me to have a grounded foundation for starting to create all the businesses that I own now today.
And the truth of the matter is, personal development always precedes financial rewards. That's what you're saying
Amen.
here.
Amen.
Amen. Yeah, my
What
journey.
number are you, Steve? What number are you?
I'm a 3'7". What, I mean, what else would I be? I'm up here on stage talking, you know what I mean?
Awesome. Yeah, but my journey very similar to Steve. I mean, as I made money, yes, I had the big house and the car and the travel and stuff, but I felt like I was reinvesting a ton back into my business, try to grow several different businesses, which was a big distraction as well. And yeah, that on top of all the money I lost in the market crash, as I shared earlier. Um, in terms of like what got me back on my feet, similar to Steve, except for I went through this company called Landmark Education. It's a personal development company. So I took a bunch of their courses. They have an office here in Houston, and that got me back on on sort of on the path of like being clear about I love making a difference for people. I love sharing what I do and and lessons I learned along the way. And yeah, and so like putting myself out there to help other people get started in real estate investing, really sort of rekindle like my 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 passion and my love for real estate and helping others. And that's how I get back on my feet. Yeah, does that answer your question, Maria?
Yes, thank you so much. And it was very thoughtful for you guys to be sharing your success story and your advice. Thank you.
Awesome. Okay. All
Hey,
right.
can I say something, Tim, real quick?
Yes, go ahead, Steve.
I was just going to add, it's funny that one thing I've noticed with people that have become successful and like happy successful, not like unhappy successful, especially if they had, a lot of us have had what other people would think of as a fail, I guess, in between. But man, I've done all kinds of stuff. Like I've hired nurse practitioners. I did like Reiki treatments, like energy, moving, tapping, psychologist, counseling. Like I bet if we all dug in, I know we're not going to open this discussion up now, but it's just really interesting how common it is for people to not talk a lot about this stuff. But I don't know any successful people that don't have a therapist. Very, very few, and haven't tried a lot of those different things that I was just talking about. So, I don't know how to explain that, but yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, I definitely, every night, I play, 8-hour affirmations for wealth and success or healing.
clear mind and clarity type stuff like that. And I mean, I found that kind of stuff really does help me or keep me on track to continue to fight the good fight every day.
Yeah, you brought up a great point there. A lot of people don't realize this, but I bet everyone on here, we all have a daily routine or a daily way that we put ourselves in a good emotional state, to make good decision, whether that's meditation or like they were saying with the inspiration, yeah, the not inspirational, but affirmation type of stuff. Yeah, I mean, those are things that we have to do every single day. It's not like, oh, now that we're down, we'll do that. Think of it like, think of it like exercising for your body, right? So you exercise to build your muscle, your body muscle. Well, all of these personal development stuff we do is for our mental muscle, which allows us to make more money and make better decisions and stuff. So yeah, that's a daily thing.
And what day are you on, Mr. Tim?
I'm
55 or 56?
57. So I'm doing a 100 days of me challenge. It's me is MEE, stands for meditation, exercise, and self-expression. And for me, self-expression is basically getting on camera. I go Facebook Live and I share an insight, a lesson, a struggle, a challenge I'm going through. And yeah, so I'm, and for the exercise part, which is my weakness, by the way, but for the exercise part, I'm doing 200 push-ups a day. Not all in one set yet, but yeah, in a day. So yeah, I mean, it's things that we have to do every single day.
Hey,
Good for
Tim.
you, man. 200 push-ups. That's monstrous.
Hey, I just wanted to invite everyone. I'm going to be hosting at 7:10 Pacific time, high performing individuals. And it's basically about what we just talked about, doing personal development, anti-stress strategy. So yeah, everyone that wants to join, you could just give me a follow. Thank you. Thank you, guys.
That's awesome, Maria.
Hey Tim, if I can share a little bit too, because
Of course.
I I'm right in there with everybody what they're talking about right now, because I had to have the mental thing first, long before I ever made my first million. It took me years to get there, but what happened was I had a mentor that was telling me, you need to start saying you're a millionaire right now. You need to like be telling people you're a millionaire. And I went, man, I feel so bad about saying that. But then I also at the same time realized, hey, that's true, because you've got to be a millionaire in your mind before you can do what a millionaire does in order to have what a millionaire has, which is $1 million. So that was a process that I went through. And it and what I learned along the way, you start looking into the science of it, and how do we program ourselves, and how our environment and people around us has programmed us, and it all really culminates in whether you succeed or not, based upon how your mindset is adjusted along the way. And once I hit 1 million, I mean, I really didn't realize it until things just got easier and easier. Uh, and of course, you reward yourself, etc., reward the family, and that type of thing. But then when you lose it all, which I think probably everybody, it seems like everybody who's made large sums of money will also lose large sums of money at some point. And of course, I had the $1 million house, everything, it's all came crashing down, and lost it all. So now it's back to a major depression, which is the first thing that happens. You go through the 7 steps of I forget what they call it, but it's dep- I'm, somebody can chime in and tell me what that is. But yeah, so you work your way through that, and it's hard. Okay, it's not easy. But here's the thing: I always knew and told myself that if you can make $1 million one time, then you can make it again, and that is true, because I saw it happening. I saw builders in the first crash that I went through; they all went bankrupt, and they all came back. So I realized early on that you can get back there. Just, you just have to work. And that's what I did. I went back to step one, started flipping properties just like everybody else does, and just worked my way back up.
That's awesome, John.
Hey, I want to real quick. Sorry, Tim's
Go
okay if
ahead,
I ask
Steve.
him.
Yeah. Go ahead.
John said something really profound for anyone that's in the audience, especially if you guys are younger and you've not heard this. He said, be, do, have. You got to be the person first and do the things that person would do. And then you get to have the stuff that person would have. And literally, most people, a lot of it has to do with society, but just the way that we're wired, a lot of us try to do that backwards. And they want to have the stuff first. So then they'll go do the things that kind of person would do, whoever they're trying to be. And then once they have that stuff and do that stuff, they think that's what makes them that person. They become that person. It is profound what the Mr. Land Mogul just dropped down here. The be do have. Dig into that. Go read about it because there's a million things on the internet about it. Go really understand what that means. That is an extremely, maybe one of the most profound things that's been talked about on this panel tonight. So you guys should definitely write that down. And if you can really encompass that, you will keep yourself out of a lot of trouble. And most importantly, you can be a lot happier of a person.
Right.
Yeah, well said, Steve. And that be do have is one of the key components on my journey upwards. And when I started hitting my millions every year, what I did is I started writing down like a journal. What was it that got me from being growing up poor, broke? I was poor and I was broke, and those are two separate things. But what was that trigger that changed it? So I wrote all this down so I would never forget it. So I knew eventually someday it might all come crashing down, as we all have that fear. Um, and so I made the notes, and over time, it took me several years to write this out. It ultimately became a book that I wrote called Millionaire Mind Programming. And it goes through the do, be, have. It goes through all the negative survival programming that you have to get past, affirmations. It covers everything that I went through to get there. Just so it was mainly for me, but then I just published it and made it available for everybody else.
That's awesome. That's awesome, John. And I love how you always, yeah, like take the lessons and put them into a book format to make it available to others. That's really great. All right. I have one last question for all of you guys on the panel. And Aaron, I know you haven't had a chance to introduce yourself. I'd love for you to be the first one to answer this question. And before you answer the question, do give us a really quick rundown of how you made and or lost your first $1 million in real estate. All right, so here's the question. If you were teaching, knowing what you know now and the journey you have been through, if you were teaching your teenage or young adults, and you could be in their 20s, right? If you were teaching your own young adults and they're starting in their real estate investing journey, what would you teach them? So Aaron, I'd like for you to go first.
How's it going, Tim?
Going good, buddy. Thanks for joining us on here.
Oh, thanks for inviting me up on stage. I appreciate it. My name's Aaron Mesrolo. I am currently sitting in my office at 6 o'clock at night by myself in Yorupa Valley, which is about an hour to, depending on traffic, it's anywhere from 1 hour to 4 hours east of LA. So I flip houses. I own a pretty healthy 8-figure rental portfolio. I build apartment buildings, pretty much all things real estate. There's not much I haven't done. Everything from buying mobile homes at the courthouse steps to 7-figure houses. So I like real estate. It's just allowed me to escape the corporate world. I've only had 2 jobs in my life. One was the Navy and one was working as a sales executive until I jumped into real estate. I lost my first million in 2007, like probably many other people, but it wasn't a loss of cash. It was a paper loss where I had gone heavy into rehabbing and flipping houses. So I had a lot of inventory, and the market rapidly it rapidly lost value. So it came to a point where I couldn't even sell the houses for what I owed, and I did not have the money to cover the spread on the debt on the properties. So I chose to suck it up. And I don't know who the speaker before me was. Sorry, I'm doing some stuff here in my office. Wasn't really paying attention to the names. I was just listening. I kept my head down and kept working, right? And it was so bad, like financially for me, that I actually ordered the Backyard Gardener's Bible and was thinking I might need to grow my own food because I didn't know that I have enough money to keep paying the mortgages to my private lenders and be able to buy food at the same time. But I never let it get me down, right? I was like, well, I can grow tomatoes and things like that. I'll be good, right? So I got really good at gardening that summer, but it never.
That's awesome.
It never got that bad, right? Luckily, and there were many nights where I laid awake in bed thinking, I'm done. Tomorrow I'm going to Home Depot and I'm getting that application, or I'm calling my old boss up and see if he'll take me back, but I never did it. I never went to Home Depot and got the application. I never called and made that call, and I'm glad I stuck it out. And at the end of the day, when it's all melting down, it's only money, right? It's only money. It's not. I still woke up every morning with my arms and my legs and my wits and my knowledge. And I could go back and do the things that I knew how to do to make money. So I never let it get me down. But I did have a lot of stress and sought out help with that, dealing with stress, which is something that when you're dealing with high level stress, you're probably not accustomed to dealing with that. So you may need professionals to step in and assist you. And somebody had also mentioned that earlier. So that was great, getting some mental guidance in how to deal with stress. Making my first million, I can't tell you there was a champagne cork popping moment when that happened. Even though I make more than $1 million a year in rent, I don't think I've ever had $1 million in cash in the bank, because there's always something to buy. So, and by something, I don't mean like I have ripped up Vans shoes on. I dress like I'm probably a 16-year-old, even though I'll be 50 this year. I suffer from severe arrested development. So I don't have expensive things. And the key for me in having a very optimistic and very happy journey was my lifestyle didn't accelerate as my income grew. So I never went and got expensive cars and expensive houses and jewelry and any of that nonsense. I just had no interest in it. I liked accumulating assets. So losing the money wasn't a world crashing moment, and making money isn't this change. I like money for the things that I can go do. So when I go visit my friends from high school who don't have a lot of money, it's all on me. I love taking them out, just spend crazy amount of money on them all, just so we can go have these crazy experiences and good times. So if I had to teach and I'm a very late starting dad, I'll be 50 this year. My daughter just turned 5. So, I'll be having this conversation when I'm in my late 60s, probably. It's go bigger, faster, and don't be afraid to lose, right? Because it's just a lesson and you can always start over again. And I think that if I did it over again, that's exactly what I would do. Is I would go bigger, faster, and I wouldn't be as scared of the losses, because you learn from them. You learn wild things from them, and you can re-implement, and you can go even bigger, faster, and achieve your goals much faster. So
That's right. That's great, Aaron. Thanks so much for sharing.
well, thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you. John, we'll go to you, sir. And I know you touched a little bit about about your journey a little bit there, but yeah, if there's anything more you want to sort of share with us regarding your journey of how you made and lost your first million, feel free to share that, and then also answer the question as well.
Sure, Tim. Thanks. Yeah, I mean, I did have a lot of cash flow after my second or third million. So at that point, it really never was a goal of mine to make that, like to spend money. It was to make the money as an achievement level only. I just saw it as a scorekeeping. Okay, I did that. My wife loved the money side of it. All right, so that's where that was a great part, because I love seeing her enjoy the money. So she got the diamond ring. And she got we would take the family to Hawaii. We would rent limos and drive all over the state just to go to dinner, for example. We were staying in Ritz Carlton's. Every time we go anywhere, it was always Ritz Carlton. You run into weird things in those situations too. I remember being on an elevator with Kobe Bryant one time. I looked around and said, "Oh, that's Kobe Bryant." So it's those little things that are fun, but I mean they're not life changing or anything, but it's interesting. Um, but the thing about it was that for me it was always about trying to get my students to that level. Right, so I knew I could do it. So, but my focus was, okay, well, how do I get other people there? And I was very successful at getting a lot of people there. So that was where I got my best satisfaction from, because money has just never satisfied me. I often tell my students, and they'll tell you, if I were not married, I'd be fine living in a treehouse. But I'm married, so that's not going to be that's not going to be the case. Um, but yeah, as far as my son, and I was just with him last night. We were having dinner. The great thing about running your own business is that you can keep a family bond together, because when you run your own business, and in our case, we homeschooled our son, and he's now about to turn 40. So this goes way back. But we started him early, bringing him into the business, starting him to do all the little things he could do at age 14 is when we started him into the business. And he learned the business, the basics of it. He's done some land flips and stuff, but every time I have dinner with him, um, he'll always bring up the greatest thing that I ever taught him was how to get in front of a group of people and talk. To this day, he every time it last night it was he brought it up again. So what happened was, he was about 22, and uh, we were doing note buying at the time, and we would go to real estate agent uh, their monthly meeting, and we would pitch them on, hey, we'll buy your note, and we can fund your buyers this way with privately held notes. Well, I had him go to one all by himself. I was not there. I didn't want to be there, and I wanted him to experience it. Well, they tore him apart. All right, so he got out there. He did exactly what we taught him to do, but the realtor just totally tore him up because he didn't have all the answers. So he was very frustrated after that. And when he came back and he told me how it was, I said, okay, well, here's the thing. I want you never to forget this. It will never be that bad again for the rest of your life. And that made an impression on him. And even today, he talks before groups all the time, and he loves it because he knew then, and his confidence level just went through the roof. And being able to speak in front of a group, no matter what you go into, and he ultimately went into the clinical psychology side of his career. Um, but that is a skill that just crosses everything. And so I would encourage everybody to bring them up in the business, and then at some point get them in front of an audience, because that really is a life-changing type of skill.
That is awesome, John. Thank you. Yeah, I totally agree with you. Yeah, I'm working on that with my son as well. I'm having him work together with a friend of mine and his real estate team, so that way he's around other people, and yeah, get a chance to practice socializing and learning how to talk to other investors. So thanks for sharing that, John. All right. Adam, hey, welcome to the room, buddy. We're
Thank you.
yeah, we're actually wrapping up this room, and the question, that yeah, the last question we have for everyone on the panel right now is, knowing what you know now about real estate investing, what what would you teach to your teenage kids, or your young adults, in their beginning journey into real estate investing? So, Adam, would you like to, yeah, to answer that?
Yeah. Thank you. Appreciate that. I got here just in time to, just like I do when I'm helping clean up the kitchen. Hey, do you need any help with that? Well, we're already done. Anyway, my name's Adam Adams, and best advice that I wish I would have known back then is, I always hear if you find a good deal, the money automatically comes. I think that gets spread out all the time, everywhere. And I've just known too many people that have actually lost deals. They've actually had a ton of earnest money. These are bigger apartments, by the way. So the earnest money is like several hundred grand, but they lose it because they cannot raise the money, and they're good operators and they have a good deal, and they just can't get the investors. So I have like a 5-step process. It's like, you first got to get educated, then you got to find the best market that you want to be in, and then you want to make sure that after you found the market, you get your team all together, and the property manager especially. Then you start raising the money. That's when you finally talk to brokers. But you got to have the money ready to go, lined up, and you're not going to be stressed about anything. I wish I knew that several years ago.
That's awesome. Okay. And yeah, share with us quickly, how did you make your first million, or lost your first million if you did gone through that?
I lost approximately $500,000 just a few months ago during COVID. We backed out of a deal because we were concerned that we had raised $6 million. It was a $20 million project. But anyway, we had everything ready to go, but we were really nervous that COVID was going to, lose money for our investors. And we've only been doing this thing called syndicating for four years. And so it wouldn't have been, hold on one sec, kiddo. So it wouldn't have been good for us to make a mistake and lose money. And so we pulled out of it, and we were counting on a $300,000 acquisition fee, and we had almost $200,000 tied into it. So it was tough. It was really tough. Thank goodness for PPP loans, and passive income, because that was really hard for us.
Gotcha. Okay. And did you start out in multifamily as how you got into real estate?
My first deal was land. Then I started managing properties, multifamily. Then I started owning multifamily. It wasn't until 10 years later, in 2016, that I was trying all sorts of random stuff. Bought my first single family in 2016. But I'm back to pretty much mostly just multifamily. I just own 3 houses, and then the rest are apartments.
Awesome. All right, Adam, thank you so much, sir. Okay, Jay, we go back to you. What would you teach, knowing what you know now, what would you teach your young adults?
Good question. And I am teaching my young adults. Mine are 20, 18, 16, and 14. And my 20-year-old just flipped her second house. Her first one was to buy her car because dad wouldn't buy one for her. And the second one was to pay for her college because dad wasn't paying for her college. So
nice.
I told her college is a scam, but if you want to go, go ahead.
That's funny. That's exactly what I tell mine.
If you want to go, I'll teach you how to pay for it. How about that? So she fixed and flipped her first house, and she made a little under 30,000. And that's
phenomenal.
Yeah. And her second one, she did about 28,000 on that one. So they're also learning. My 2 younger ones are learning how to rehab. They like the hands-on work. The oldest likes the brain work, and so we focus on whatever their skills are, what they enjoy doing, and help them do that. So my 2 middle kids could go and rehab the inside of the house. My oldest can find one, do the pricing, negotiate it, and do the budget, and hire hire her brother and sister to rehab it. But we're also teaching them the numbers, how to do checkbook balances, how to pay bills, how to do QuickBooks. So they're learning all aspects of the business.
That's awesome, Jay. All
Exactly what they
right.
ought to be teaching them in school, but there you go.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep. Awesome. Rod, we go to you next. What would you teach your young ones, your young
Yeah.
adults?
So I have 4 children. I got 3 boys, and my youngest is my daughter. They're exactly all 2 years apart, 18, 16, 14, and 12. And my 18-year-old, I started him when he was 16. Now he's driving. And so anytime I get a deal, if I need pictures taken, if I need somebody to walk the properties and tell me how bad it is, I'll send him out. He'll put lock boxes on doors and stuff like that. But all of them, I constantly teach them and explain to them, hey, this is what wholesaling is. This is how it works. This is what rehabbing is. And even my daughter, she started on her iPad with a program called Roblox. I don't know who else's children plays with Roblox, but I explained to her, look, if you can build a model house on Roblox, there's no reason why you can't get a real designing program and start designing some real houses. So I got them involved in that. And me and my wife were just talking about getting them into the trading side too. So
That's awesome. Very cool. All right, Theo, what would you teach your young adults?
So I don't have any kids yet. So I was kind of thinking about what I would teach them, but it would definitely be how to be good with money, because that's the number one thing. You can make all the money in the world, but if you suck at managing your money, you're going to be just as broke as you were when you didn't have all the money in the world. So I think that would be the first thing, and then invest in real estate, obviously.
That's awesome, Theo. Yeah, that's definitely very important. Yeah, mine are 13 and 16 now, but yeah, when they were much younger, we had them do the envelope system, the Dave Ramsey envelope system since they were kids. So yeah. All right, Steve, what would you teach your young ones?
Hey, my young ones are 18, 14, and 14. So not so young anymore. But, for me, one thing that there's several things, but I think the biggest thing is to master a craft that you can monetize. It's one of the things that I think we talked about, making a lot of money and failing and coming back and all those different things. There's something liberating. And one of the reasons that people need to focus on one thing long enough to become a master of it is because there's this liberating power to know that you could get picked up and dropped off in anywhere, USA, and start making money again. It's like being an ATM to some degree. And, I think mastering a craft that lines up with your strengths that you can monetize is one thing. And then, just controlling your mind, just being able to, if you can control your mind, you can control your environment. And so those are two key things that I think will serve someone well, and not just my kids, right? But that would just serve anybody well, that amidst all the things that can go on, if you can get back to those two things, you're never going to be poor and you're never going to be broke.
That's awesome, Steve. Yeah, totally agree with you there. Yeah, and I try to be as vulnerable as I can with my kids, like share with them, when I'm making a mistake, I let them know, like, look, this is a mistake I made, or sometimes like I just made the mistakes, like this is a mistake I just made, so that way they can learn from that. And in terms of the real estate side of what I'm teaching so I have a 16-year-old that trying to pay for his car, and so I'm teaching him real estate, more specifically residential lots and land. John, you're gonna love this one, John. So we're going through his first deal right now. he got the property. It's basically 3 residential lots connected to adjacent lots, so they connect to each other. Anyways, we got in a contract for 55,000. We have a wholesale buyer that we're selling it to right now for 95,000. So he doesn't get to keep all of that money, but yeah. I'm right now. I'm just teaching him lead generation, just to get the leads warm up, and then pass them on to me to do the acquisition. And then once he get used to that, then the next step is to teach him acquisition. But yeah, land is what what I'm focusing on teaching my son. I would love to see him grow, because where I'm going with land is into land development. So I want to take him on that journey with me into land development as well. So awesome, Chewy, welcome. Chewy, can you talk?
Hi, Tim. How are you?
Doing good. Hey, we're actually wrapping up the call right now. If you're the last one to go, and we'd love for you to share two things. How did you make your first million or lost your first million in real estate? And what would you teach your young adults, knowing what you know now, regarding real estate investing?
Oh, that's such a beautiful topic. I made my first million. So I'm 55 now. I made my first million when I hit 30, and it's because I started a very simple. What I saw was a doable, simple plan to buy one house per year for the next 30 years. And I said, oh, I think that makes sense. So everybody here has done way more than that. But at the time, with my skill set, which was minimal, and my fear level, which was high, at the time, it was just a small enough plan to help me step forward. And so I stepped to house. Then I was like, I think I can do bigger than duplex and a fourplex. I was like, oh, I think I could do bigger than an eightplex and a 12plex. And then it became, all of a sudden, a man blessed me with an opportunity to buy 30 houses altogether. And then a man offered me 32 houses altogether. And then I was like, wow, maybe I should start buying apartments instead of all these houses. And the key of all that, though, was that I feel that it was wonderful that it was baby steps. It was truly baby steps. And so I think the key that I tell my kids is just start. Like my daughter's home from California right now because of COVID. She can't be at the college campus, and so I'm showing her a couple key zip codes that I really love, and I'm telling her, okay, here's the criteria. Go online, and I'm showing her what to look for, and telling her, okay, let's find a deal, and we'll help you close it. So she's excited to do. I'm working on having her do her first one, and so it's exciting to hear you say that you're doing the same with your son. So it'd be nice to share with each other more in the future
For
about
sure,
how we're
yeah.
doing that with our son and daughter.
All right, awesome. Yeah, great share. So is there a specific strategy that you're teaching your daughter?
That's a good question. I'm not. Honestly, right now, I'm just so happy that she's actually back home from California, and she actually says, Dad, I kind of want to do this. So help me find. So what I'm doing is I have an area that I really love. And so I guess the key thing that I'm having her do is I'm having her bird dog for me and showing her what I call a good deal versus one that I'm not looking for. So I'm showing her what my criteria is, and it's really fun because she's saying, "Oh, now I kind of get why, like we would drive around with you in the car when we were little, and we'd see you pull up to these places, and sometimes we'd wonder, why the heck did Dad buy that thing, and now I kind of see the method behind the madness. So I think it's just kind of fun that she's trying to kind of click in the scene. She's starting to understand the numbers, and she's actually happy to, I think it's kind of sometimes hard to tell these kids how great this is to do. So it takes on its own power when they start saying, "Ooh, I like this. Oh, now I get it."
That's awesome for sure, for sure. Yeah, definitely you and I can share more, and yeah, let the two of them talk and compare notes too.
Yeah, that would be great.
Awesome. All right, everybody, we're gonna wrap up this call now. Thank you so much for joining on this call. I mean, this has been one of my favorite topics. I am like so inspired, of the stories that I've heard from all of our speakers that have came and gone today, and their stories of how they made their first million, lost their first million, made it back again. It just, yeah, it's been so inspiring. I just absolutely love it. I am making the, so I have been recording this call, so I will make the videos available. For those of you who had invited your friends to this group and sent me a DM, I will send you the link tomorrow to the videos. For those of you who did not get around to sharing with your friends, if you want the video, just go ahead and DM me. And yeah, just make a promise to me that the next time that I do a room, that you will share the room with your friends. And thank you so much, all of our speakers on the phone, Theo, Steve, John, Chewy, Rod. Thank you so much, guys, for coming in to share your story, to inspire others. Really, really appreciate you. All right, guys. Well, you guys have an awesome, awesome evening. I'm gonna give us a gong to end the call. Steve, you were trying to say something?
Thank you, Tim. Great call as always.
Hey, thanks, Tim. As always.
Thanks, guys. You guys have a good one.
Thanks. Good night.
Good night.
Good night,
Hey,
guys.
Tim. Good night, everybody.
Good night.